Hello and welcome to another episode of Weapons and Warfare. For Straight Arrow News, I'm your host, Ryan Robertson. This week, some information about the battle against disinformation. I recently had the chance to catch up with one man who's doing his part to stem the tide against those that deal in disinformation. Ryan Macbeth is an intelligence analyst and Army veteran who is meeting the enemy where they operate, online. Plus, we're headed to France for our Weapon of the Week as we recognize some members of our armed forces that represented the Stars and Stripes on the Olympic stage. But first, some headlines you may have missed. An Air Force investigation determined the crash of a CV-22B Osprey that killed 8 Air Force Special Operations Command airmen was largely caused by cracks in a metal gear and, to a lesser degree, the pilot's decision to keep flying despite multiple onboard warnings to land the aircraft. The November 2023 crash off the coast of Japan was the 4th deadly mishap involving the tilt-rotor craft in the past 2 years, and it led to a months-long grounding of the military's fleet of Ospreys. The report released by the Air Force shows investigators concluded the failure of a pinion gear in the prop rotor gearbox was in fact to blame, but they are still unsure why it failed. Investigators also pointed to onboard voice recordings indicating the pilot in command was focused on completing the crew's training exercise over what he ultimately decided were errors from a faulty detector that warns crews when gears like the pinion gear chip during flight. In March, Ospreys were cleared to return to flight status with limitations, primarily no flights without a suitable divert airfield within 30 minutes. The B-1 might be getting a bit of a glow-up. That's after crews at Edwards Air Force Base recently tested some new hardware. It's called the LAM, or the Load Adaptable Modular Pylon. In layman's terms, it's an extended pylon mounted underneath the Lancer. Built by Boeing, the pylon is designed to carry a variety of standard ordnance and emerging weapons. Read hypersonic, with no performance loss to one of the Air Force members' premier bombers.
We're excited that the LAM pylon is going to be able to allow the warfighter to carry a whole new set of weapons, and those capabilities would be very important for winning future conflicts and deterring our adversaries.
In a news release, the Air Force says the B-1 was chosen due to aircraft availability at Edwards, but the LAM can be modified for attachment to a variety of other aircraft if the need were to arise. Finally, for all of the talk about NATO in recent months, both here in the US and abroad, it's important to remember the North Atlantic Treaty Organization isn't just a political bargaining chip. It's 32 countries working together to ensure peace among its member nations. That cooperation was recently on display in Latvia as American service members took part in a NATO exercise dubbed Paladin Strike.
Coolest thing I found out so far about the exercise is just seeing how well the nations are working together to plan and execute the exercise and their mission on both sides for the battle group from Poland and Latvia.
For 4 days in early August, soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines worked with Latvian, Canadian, Romanian, British, Polish, and Spanish counterparts on combined movements of troops and materials as well as tactical field engagements. And it all happened a little more than 120 miles from the Russian border. One of the great things about social media, everyone gets a chance to weigh in on something. But one of the absolute worst parts about social media, everyone gets a chance to weigh in on something. This may come as a surprise, but not all opinions and insights are created equally. Some are more informed, crafted in the crucibles of experience and context. Ryan Macbeth knows all about this. He spent 20 years in the Army before becoming an intelligence analyst, software engineer, and YouTube sensation. I stumbled across Macbeth's content a little after the start of the Ukraine war. It was a video debunking the notion Ukraine was being run by Nazis, a lie Putin used to justify his invasion of Ukraine. Now, aside from just being an entertaining presenter, Macbeth's videos struck me for another reason. They were full of facts. As a journalist, it was great to see another torchbearer for truth trying to sort through all the misinformation and disinformation that was out there. I had the chance to talk to Macbeth recently. We covered a lot of ground and several hypothetical scenarios, but what I really wanted to know is why he wanted to get into the truth-telling business in the first place.
Ryan Macbeth, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today. What made your content stand out to me, Ryan, was your just desire to share truth and beat down mistruth and disinformation. But before we get started on everything, Ryan, if you can, for our audience, I know you have a 20-year infantryman career. Kind of give our audience kind of a Reader's Digest version of your career path to this point.
So I was an infantryman for 20 years. While serving, I got a degree in computer science, and then I got a master's in engineering management. And after I got out, I got a degree in MSc in cybersecurity. And I ended up working for the government, mainly doing what's called CDS, cross-domain solutions. That's where you take stuff from an area of low trust and push it up into an area of high trust. Like if you have a drone feed, when the footage enters the camera, technically that camera isn't on a secure network. So how do you take that information and put that information onto a secure network while making sure the information flowing in doesn't have any data that could allow a system to be hacked? Then I worked for Accenture doing something called C4ISR, Command, Control, Communications, Computers, Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance. Basically, we found bad guys. And once we found those bad guys, we'd give that information to our client, and our client would either continue surveillance or use more kinetic options to deal with the problem. So while working for Accenture, I had a YouTube channel. It was mainly about software programming, and once the war in Ukraine kicked off, I started to do a couple of videos on cybersecurity in Ukraine and some videos from my anti-tank experience. And my channel went from 5,000 followers to 100,000 followers almost overnight.
When we're talking about the war in Ukraine, and that's what kind of made your social media following balloon and what's gotten you to the point now, was it the Nazis in Ukraine disinformation video? Was that the first one that kind of blew up for you? Or what was the first one that, like, hey, I got something here?
I don't. So the first video that really blew up for me was a video that I did about why tank turrets pop off of their hulls. I actually can't tell you. I don't know which was the first disinformation video. And I didn't set out to become a disinformation expert, but I think that since I knew so much about the military and anti-tank warfare, and I kind of became an expert at going like, no, you're wrong, and here's why you're wrong. It's because tanks actually do this, or reactive armor actually works like this. And what I kind of noticed was that there was just so much disinformation out there about how the military works that by me kind of peeling back some of this stuff, I found more and more stuff. And I guess over 2 years, I kind of became like Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump became a really good runner because people were always chasing him. I became really good at finding disinformation agents because they were just freaking everywhere on the subject of Ukraine.
Obviously, the videos are doing well for you, so there's, as a content creator, you see that and you want to give the audience what they want, right? But the audience flocks to that because there's a desire for that, right? How important in your mind is the disinformation, misinformation takedown mission for you?
It's more important now than I think it was at the start of the conflict in Ukraine, mainly because one of the things that I realized doing my work is that Information war is a weapon. Infodom war. And one of the things I've done over the past year, since September of last year, is I have traveled around giving speeches about how information war is a domain of warfare. In fact, on the 10th, I think I'm going to be in Ohio with the Ohio National Guard and all of their judge advocate generals in the Ohio National Guard. They're going to this one meeting, and I'm going to give a presentation where I'm going to try to convince them that we need to come up with a plan for treating information warfare practitioners as combatants. Because think about it like this. So let's say when you buy a drill, do you buy a drill because you want a drill, or do you buy a drill because you want a hole? It's because you want a hole, right? Nobody collects drills, right? You buy a drill because you need a hole. So when you buy a weapon, you don't really buy a weapon to buy a weapon. You buy a weapon because you're going to need the effects of that weapon. And the effects of that weapon might be to destroy a bridge, right? So a weapon is really an effector. So let's say you want to prevent your adversary from crossing a bridge. You could use a weapon like a bomb or a cruise missile. Maybe you could use a cyber attack, right? Send a cyber attack and disable the electronic controls on the bridge so the toll gates won't open or whatever. Or you could use information warfare to tell a bunch of weak-minded college students to go shut down the bridge because of colonialist, imperialist, whatever. And we've already seen that when a bunch of students shut down a bridge, shut down the Golden Gate Bridge in California. That was a weapon. TikTok is a weapon. These students were motivated by TikTok to go shut down a bridge. And if the adversary can do that to a bridge, they can also say, if deterrence fails and China invades Taiwan, Taiwan has always been Chinese. This is colonialist, imperialist. The U.S. is trying to take Taiwan for its own. You need to go to a naval base and glue yourself to a ship. And now you have an information warfare program working as a weapon system that is disabling a ship. No different than a bomb can.
How is that message being received?
Well, I haven't polled all 150. And usually I am very blunt when I've talked about how we need to kill these people. And when we start putting Hellfire missiles through people's windows, or we start putting TLAMs into an office building that's being used as an information warfare center, they'll probably get the message. And usually when people interview me about this, and I tell them that, and I'm very blunt, we need to kill these people. Usually they go, oh my goodness, they're clutching their pearls. You're going to put a TLAM through someone's window, through some teenager's window? Well, probably not a teenager's window. There are other effects that you might be able to use. You might be able to use a cyber attack. There might be groundwork that you can do to take out critical parts of this operation. But we need to start considering information war to be a domain of war. The land domain has been a domain of war ever since someone picked up a spear and said, I don't like the way Thag is always in charge, right? And sea warfare has been a domain of war since the Peloponnesian War, where they were fighting on ships. And air has been a domain of war since we've had fighter planes, in World War I, planes shooting at each other. And well, now we have information war. Russia can't defeat Ukraine by force of arms. They can't. They would have done it already. So how do you defeat Ukraine? Well, you can cut off their supply of arms. How does Russia do that? Well, they could use a weapon. They could bomb some of the factories in Germany and maybe use missiles on factories in the U.S. Well, that'll cause a war. But if we use information war to convince people that Ukraine is corrupt, your money's getting thrown away, Vladimir Zelensky's wife just bought a new Bugatti with your tax dollars, well, then we get people to call their congressman and say, I don't want us sending money to Ukraine. And that stops the munitions just as easily as a bomb. We are at war right now. And these people who are using information warfare to affect as an effector, they need to be targeted.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's,
You're acting like every other interviewer that has interviewed me about this subject, where you don't want to say, wow, you're kind of right, but you're also a psychopath.
Well, I mean, you might be. I don't know. But no, you bring up some like startling revelations, right? And you bring up some points that it's like, look, if we're being serious about where the world is heading, and if we're being serious about trying to prevent things, we need to be serious about where our enemies are coming from and how they're coming to attack us. So I don't judge that. I mean, you're the 20-year infantry veteran, right? I'm not. But it is stark to think about all they're doing is using computers to post messages or something like that. But in the 21st century, I mean, it's
a domain of warfare. And when someone blew up, when terrorists blew up the USS Cole, they did it on the water. And we didn't go, oh, well, we can't retaliate by air because they did it on the water, right? So if somebody is using information warfare as an effector in cyberspace, why can't we attack them through kinetic means, either on land or from the air? It's a domain of warfare, and we cross domains of warfare all the time.
Hey, Ryan, really appreciate your time. As from one journalist to another truth bearer, wanted to say I appreciate your efforts to speak to the misinformation and disinformation and make sure that people are getting the right information so that they can make educated decisions about their lives and those around them. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Ryan, I had a great time. Thank you.
Serving you clarity through context, our mission at SAN is to deliver the news straight down the middle. We're different from mainstream media because we spotlight distorted headlines and show you how to do it too. Discover stories that right and left-leaning outlets are choosing not to cover by using our Media Mist tool. Download the SAN app and turn on notifications to have straight facts delivered right to your phone or tablet, and get straight facts anytime at SAN.com.
Time now for our weapon of the week, or should I say our weapons of the week, as in plural. That's because we want to take a moment to recognize a few members of our country's military that recently represented the Stars and Stripes in a different way, as Olympians in Paris for the 2024 Games. The U.S. Army sent the largest contingent of athletes to the Games with 7 active duty soldiers, 1 Army Reserve soldier, and 2 veterans. Leading the field was Army veteran Vincent Hancock, who brought home his 4th Olympic gold medal, winning men's skeet shooting and joining the ranks of Michael Phelps, Carl Lewis, and Katie Ledecky as one of only 7 Olympians ever to win the same event in 4 separate games. He also bagged a silver in the skeet mixed team event. Joining Hancock in the medal hall was newly promoted Army Staff Sergeant Sagan Madalena. The Army shooting instructor stationed at Fort Moore, Georgia, brought home silver in the 50-meter rifle 3 positions women's final. Army Reservist First Lieutenant Sam Kendricks pole vaulted his way to the medal stand, adding a silver to the bronze he won in Rio back in 2016. Finally, Army Captain Sammy Sullivan. The West Point graduate was a key contributor for the U.S. Women's Rugby Sevens that shocked Australia 14-12 in the waning moments to win the bronze medal, America's first rugby medal in 100 years. We here at Weapons and Warfare want to extend a sincere congratulations to not only the medalists, but to all the Olympians that represented their branch of service and their country in Paris.
All opinions expressed in this segment are solely the opinions of the contributors.
That's going to just about do it for us this week at Weapons and Warfare. And for my wrap, I want to focus on something we mentioned during the debrief with Ryan Macbeth. and that is the importance of safeguarding truth in the digital age. Listen, we live in a truly incredible era of human existence. The way we live, work, travel, the way we communicate, they've all seen massive shifts over the last century or so. Shifts which only accelerated when we added computers to the mix. Along with those shifts came more independence for the average person, more freedom to decide where to work, where to live, and ultimately, who to believe. When you aren't reliant on monarchs, religious leaders, or other arbiters of information to find out about the world around you, you are empowered to educate yourself. But, as a wise old man in a comic once said,
"With great power comes great responsibility."
When it comes to the sharing of information and data in the digital age, yes, you have the power to do your own research. So please, be responsible enough to make sure the place from which you are getting your information is reputable. Be responsible enough to make sure you aren't being misled or hearing only what you want to hear. At Weapons and Warfare, and Straight Arrow News as a whole really, we take our responsibility as journalists very seriously. We have ongoing discussions about how to tell a story, which details to include, and yes, sometimes which details to exclude. On this show, our mission is to make the world of weapons and warfare more accessible to the average person. Give them the resources to make an informed decision, and then let them do so. It's how we fight against misinformation and disinformation. And I'm going to take it a step further and ask you for your help, because the stakes are just too high. If you like the work we're doing on Weapons and Warfare to share truth about this world, please like, subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Of course, we want more folks to see our work, but really, we want people to get the truth. As a responsible member of society, I hope you will join us in that endeavor. For senior producer Brett Baker, video editor Brian Spencer, and graphic artist Dakota Patillo, I'm Ryan Robertson for Straight Arrow News, signing off.